Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Moving Through and Beyond podcast. I'm your host, Carey Conley, and I'm honored to bring to you a very special person in my life, my guest, Sharon Lechter, today. Thanks for coming here, Sharon.
I am delighted to be here, Carey.
Honored. Sharon is a pretty big deal in this world. If you all don't know this, she has co-authored or authored 27 books, 5-time New York Times bestseller. She's known as the financial literacy expert in this world, and just my dear, dear friend. So I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you too, and I'm delighted to be here with you.
Well, thank you. So at this podcast, what we're doing here, Sharon, as you know, is I want to just bring hope to the world because there's so much going on and so many people working through a lot of adversity in their life. And I know you've been through some tough stuff too and things that we have in common that we'll talk about. But I want to start with you talking a little bit about your upbringing, how you were raised and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I think it's important because that's part of that journey is how you create success in your life is learning the ups and the downs. And I started in a very lower middle class home. We lived in a little tiny house between my mom's beauty shop and my dad's used car lot. I was very embarrassed about where we lived. And I tell people I've been in real estate since I was 10 because I had to go scrub out bathrooms between tenants on our rental properties. I just hated it. I swore I would never be an entrepreneur. I wanted to become a sophisticated professional. So my sister and I were the first generation in our family to go to college. Got my degree in accounting. Thought I was pretty hot stuff. I was in Atlanta, young, single, CPA, having a pretty good time, but not in control of my time or my life because I was working so many hours. And at the ripe old age of 25, one of my clients called. Every phone call can change your life, and asked me to join him. He was buying a company out of bankruptcy. I still remember going back to my condo in Atlanta, and it didn't have PCs, didn't have phones back then. The old yellow legal pad doing pros and cons, and I bet everybody watching and listening has done that. Pros and cons. Didn't help me a bit. I could argue both sides. My hand kind of took off across the top of the page and said, why not? And that's kind of still my mantra in life, Carey, is why not do something different? Why not take the path less traveled?
Right.
Why not solve a problem or serve a need? Why not take a risk? So I made the decision to leave public accounting. And it was the worst business decision of my life. But had I not made that decision, I wouldn't have met a young man named Michael Lechter. We've been married 42 years. So the worst business decision became my best life decision. So
I think there's so many great points you've made here for people listening, Sharon. One is that you were determined at an early age to take, a different path in your life. I think a lot of times we get to a fork in the road, right? We either follow the path of what we saw and what we learned, or we get determined to go in a whole different direction, which you did. Do you remember the moment that you made that decision and why you made it?
Well, there have been a couple of forks during my lifetime, and back then there were several. And one of it was because I'd been a pioneer in public accounting for women. I was one of the very first women ever hired in public accounting. So that had its own issues related to having to work harder than the men that were hired with me. And it was really that when I went in for my review and my managing partner said, you're far excelling anybody else that started with you. And you're ready to become manager, but it will make the men that started with you, the guys, upset if you make it and they don't. So we're going to give you the money, not the title. And that was about a week before I got this phone call from the client. And so it made the whole why not a whole lot easier, thinking, you don't know me at all. It's not about the money. It's about the recognition of hard work, success, perseverance. And I said, if this happens now, when I didn't do anything wrong, I did everything right, and I was still being held back, when I realized I wasn't really in control of my own destiny. And I'm not a very good employee. I realized
Me either.
that I needed to be in control of my life. And so when this call came, it was like destiny. I mean, I believe there's an infinite power at work. So it was like, okay, let's give this a risk. And had I not made it, if I had not made that horrible business decision, I wouldn't have met my life partner and the man of my dreams. So.
Which is the other point I want to talk about for just a few minutes, because you and I both know that so many people don't take that leap. They don't take the risk because they feel like they're going to, what if they fail? And I think the point you're making here is you did it anyway because not knowing what was going to happen, you just felt like it was the right way to go.
Well, I think we all were, we're in school, we're taught to be compliant, and we end up getting into a career and we get complacent. And what happens is we stay inside our comfort zone, right? We stay in our own little bubble. And when we end up having a crisis in our lives, or if things turn into chaos, and in order to get out of that, you got to kind of say, okay, why not do something different? And every one of us is where we are today based on the choices we made before today.
Right.
And if we are not happy with where we are, we just simply need to start making different choices. Start making different choices. Ask yourself, why not? I often tell people sometimes you have to close one door for other doors to open.
Right.
Sometimes we fill our life with busyness so we can't think about the fact that we're not happy with where we are.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, start making some different choices. Close a few doors and make some space for the world to respond to you and give you that new opportunity.
Yeah, because like you said, you met the love of your life. What you call a failure in the business, you excelled in the personal realm. So
Napoleon Hill said, out of every adversity comes a seed of an equal or greater benefit. Boy, did I get that instant results. Sometimes we have a failure in adversity and it takes us a long time to figure out what the benefit was.
Yes.
But I had instant feedback.
Yeah, so great. So from there, you moved on and did some really big stuff, started authoring books and...
Yeah, it was, my life, I just focus on that question, why not? And solve a problem and serve a need, every successful business. And so we had moved to Wisconsin. Mike is an intellectual property attorney, and our kids didn't like to read. And we had a dear friend who had invented the first talking children's book. And I loved it because I wanted, brought reading back to kids. And so I joined forces with him and we worked together and took that brand around the world very quickly. The first year, 1 million, second 9, third 23, and then 52 million is the year we sold the company. But I learned so much about publishing. I also learned about the power of association because believe it or not, dinosaur times, this was back in 1987, 88, kids didn't have screens. They didn't have electronics. And so we were saying, how can we get parents to trust us? And we did that by aligning with little companies like Disney, Warner Brothers, Marvel Comics, Sesame Street. And that's what really the parents trusted those brands. Therefore, our products were immediately accepted and exploded around the world.
It's amazing. So those took off, and I'm thinking during some stretch in there, you and I have a common thing that has happened in my life. I lost my son to suicide now 5 years ago, and I know you've lost your son as well. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, we were, when we sold the Talking Book Company, we had moved here to Arizona, and that's when I started the Rich Dad Company, and that was in 2006. So in 2012, we lost our youngest son. And, you play a big game, you're out there a lot, you're playing at high levels, and then all of a sudden, your life crashes because you're not supposed to outlive your kids. And I tell people it's like living in a world of numbness or living in neutral. All right, lots of downs, no highs. And I used to get stressed out about so much, Carey. Yeah. I'm sure you can relate to this.
Yes.
I'd be worried about everything. Nothing bugs me too much anymore, because when you have that kind of loss, and I know you know exactly, we belong to a sorority. We don't want other people to ever join. And you just find yourself in this existence of numbness.
Yeah.
And in fact, I still worked, but I didn't have the joy. I didn't feel the contribution level that I wanted to. And I almost thought about retiring. Got a lot of pushback from family and friends. And I could hear my son. I lost my son to suicide, as you did. And it's so difficult. That grief hangs with you. And for me, I still have that element of guilt, but I also know I did everything to support him that I could. But I heard him in my ear saying, Mom, get over it. There's more for you to do. And you're still here for a reason. And so that's when I really started reaching out and decided to play big again. Started my Facebook group, the Play Big Movement. And because I started that because I knew there were so many other people that were in that same place of numbness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show them how to take the blinders off. Because when you take the blinders off, the opportunities are there. We're our own worst enemy because we look down in grief. And it's so important for you to allow other people to lift you up and to realize that no matter what you've been through, whatever stopped you in your tracks, and certainly the last several years with COVID, a lot of people had stopped in their tracks. It could be a death, like in your and my case. It could be an illness, a financial setback. You're still here.
Yeah.
Whatever you've been, you're still here, and you're still here for a reason. And find the message out of the mess, right?
Yeah. Well, the whole reason I'm doing this podcast is because I hear my son too. That it's, I think it's so hard for people to understand who have not lost a child, period, or lost it to suicide, how we move through it and use it for good. And that's one of the biggest questions I get, Sharon, which I'm sure you do too, is how in the world are you through this, which you were never totally through this, and how are you functioning, not only just functioning, but thriving, right? And you've mentioned to me a couple of times, I got so much advice after my son died, and also my husband. You need to get a counselor. You need to get in group therapy. You need to do this, do that. Stop working. Don't move. I got all sorts of advice, which I heeded some, but most of it I did it my own way. And I'm curious to know, what were some of the things that helped you get through it?
Well, let me add to those that didn't help. It was amazing when, I would not have survived had it not been for the friends around me.
Right.
But my husband, many marriages don't survive the loss of a child. And my husband and I have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. And so he had to grieve his way, and I had to grieve my way. His was to hide away in a corner by himself. All right. I was surrounded by friends. If I didn't have my friends there lifting me up, I don't know if I would have survived it. So it's really important to understand that people grieve differently.
Yes.
And you have to allow them the space to do that. But then being surrounded by friends, it was amazing the number of people that all of a sudden I became their counselor. They know I lost my son to suicide. So they are calling me because they're worried about their husband. They're worried about their child.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden, we're supposed to have the magic pill for them to help with their loved one. And I guess there was a piece of honor in it, but also a piece of fear that, hey, I certainly don't have the answers. But it was. I didn't really talk about it. I'm a keynote speaker, and I didn't ever talk about my son from stage because I never wanted to make it appear like I was benefiting from his loss.
I totally understand what you're saying.
And I was speaking in Amsterdam. It was Amsterdam for 1,500 people, and I did my keynote, and then they did a Q&A on stage, and the guy was supposed to ask me, "What's the worst business mistake you've ever made?" And so I'm sitting here in front of 1,500 people, and he asked me, "What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you?" Well, there's only one answer to that.
Yeah.
And so there was at that moment, a switch. I said, okay, I can lie, talk about a business mistake, or I can tell the truth. And so I shared for the first time ever about losing my son. And when I got off stage, there were 200 people lined up to talk to me. And that made me realize that vulnerability is okay, and that there are people out there that need to hear how you've gotten through something. And so, at first I would just talk about losing him. He was a Marine. And I'm still not comfortable just talking about the fact that I lost him to suicide, but I'm more comfortable about it. And I think the way to get through it is to see that sharing your experience helps someone else.
Yep.
And, you've heard me talk about, I was raised by a father that said every night, "Sharon, have you added value to someone's life today?" When you see that you sharing your story of pain and survival can help someone else, it makes you understand that you have a mission, that you have the ability to help others. And with that ability comes responsibility.
Yeah. I get a lot of the same messages you do because I am so public about it. And my daughter and I, as you know, co-authored a book called Keep Looking Up several years ago. And so she started speaking. So we both get messages on a regular basis about them knowing somebody in crisis. What do we do? What did we do? Did we see it coming? What are the signs? You know, all the questions that clinically I'm not trained for. So it's an awkward position to be in, and I want to help them so badly, especially when the moms call me worried about their kids, which there's so much of that happening in the world right now.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to handle now. I mean, when I was sharing that story, it was like 2 days after my son died, when I'm like I can't even talk. And people are coming over to soothe me, and they start talking to me about their child or their son being worried about it. So, but it's their own pain. And so when we share our pain, people feel more comfortable sharing theirs.
Right.
And just being able to talk about it helps them. And that's, I think, giving that safe space and becoming, not an advisor, but a listener, so that they can share and get it out there.
Yeah. I just came off of a conference a couple months ago where there was 900 parents in the room who had lost kids. And it was amazing to me. We took over the whole place, number one. And the staff was incredible. But the feedback from the staff was they kept saying, how are these people, like, they're coming together and they're happy and they're having conversations and they're joyful. And I think it's just because us collectively being together, Sharon, was amazing, truly amazing.
Well, I'm sure. And I think it's so important because mental illness is not a choice. And that it took me a while to even within my own family, feeling people say he was making bad choices. Well, yeah, he was making bad choices, but he was in a very deep state of depression. And mental illness is a disease. And today it's more rampant than ever.
Yes.
And it scares me, particularly the number of young people that are committing suicide. And, I don't think social media is helping us. I think and so I think it's so important for us to pay attention to these young people and older people that are feeling disenfranchised, that are feeling lost, and give that opportunity. The amount of suicides and the loneliness that people had during COVID was scary because they didn't have that human touch.
Yeah, I started looking at the statistics, and shockingly, when I was doing the research, there's now research pointing to 5 to 11-year-olds now taking their life, which there's just no words for that. And it breaks my heart. It's one of the reasons I think I just finally launched this podcast, because I thought, okay, this has just got to stop. And I think a lot of it, like you said, there's a disconnectedness of people right now. And the reason I'm so happy you're sharing your story, because people would look at you and the success that you've had and how you're living now and the life that you have, and not feel that they could relate to you with going through their own stuff, especially suicide. So I appreciate you sharing so much about that. I think you having a tribe around you that let you grieve the way you wanted to grieve is so important. It's one of the chapters in my book with Laurel is that we talk about how, when they want to help you the way they would want to be helped, and they don't really realize that they need to really respond and mirror what you really want. And I think that was critical.
Well, I think, and just absolutely, I think tying together what I said earlier about the fact that we look down in grief and we cannot see the light because we're looking down, we're putting blinders on through our grief. And the title of your book, Keep Looking Up, it is because there is hope. And you still are here for a reason.
Yes.
And you've been through a tragedy, and you're not alone. Other people have been through similar tragedies. There's no explanation for why we lose a child. There's no explanation. There's no thing, if that had been different, because mental illness is cumulative at keeping you just never know.
Right.
And all you can do is the best that you possibly can. And pay attention to the signs, to the warning signs, and get some professional help.
Yes. That's always the first answer I give people. When they ask me for my advice, I tell them, what you need to know is that I'm not certified. I'm not. I don't have a degree in anything. Go find somebody that you can talk to that really knows this path and can help you sooner than later.
Well, the best thing we can do is give them a hug and tell them they're not alone.
And then there's that.
Yeah.
Any other advice that you want to share with somebody that maybe has lost a loved one, of what really helped you the most now that you are a little bit further down the road looking back?
Well, keep them alive, and remember the good times. And that helps you get through it as well. To know, I mean, you look back, I go through the same thing everybody else does. You know, he'd be 40 this year. I wonder if he'd have married. I wonder if he had kids. And that takes you into a place that you don't need to go.
Right.
The what ifs, what if, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. But understanding the joy of the time we did have together. Understanding that, his contract for his life was over and he chose to go home. And, I hope that he comes back in a happier state than he was. But we are shepherds of our children. We are not in control of them. And we're here to nurture them and support them and let them chart their own course.
Yeah.
And when we see them, when we can give guidance, it's important to do that.
Yeah.
But we have to accept responsibility for ourselves and know that we have a contract. And if you're letting your life pass by because you're living in grief, you're not helping yourself. You're not helping the people who love you because you're causing them harm. And so make that choice. Read your book. Keep looking up. And find a way to find peace in your heart. And a lot of that comes from helping others.
Yeah, I would agree. Like you, I took some time off after Cole died. I kept working because I had clients that I was responsible for, and I honored that commitment. But I kind of laid low for about a year. Kind of went inward and did a lot of prayer and a lot of meditation and a lot of just realizing that Cole's still here. And there was a reason why he left, and I'm supposed to take this message forward. So now you are working on a lot of other big stuff too. You want to share some of that?
Well, I think, one of the things I started doing after I lost my son was one-on-one mentoring, which I'd really never done before. I wrote a lot of books, did a lot of speaking, did a lot of group things. But when I started the one-on-one mentoring, it helped fill part of that hole. And in fact, a lot of my clients call me Mama Lechter. And it gives me just a little bit of peace. It helps me feel good that I'm contributing to someone, because you do. I still have that guilt. The guilt is there, and in doing that, I've found my footing, and I'm involved in several different companies now where I've seen a way to play really big again. And so one of the areas I'm working on is in real estate. I aligned with a company that provides a fantastic value for people to create personal wealth, because I get frustrated. I see all these real estate agents that get a great commission and then they blow it, and they're not creating any personal wealth. And so my husband and I aligned, and I've never done this. I've always been strictly education, but about a year and a half ago, we aligned with a company, EXP, and because its formula is one built for the agents to help them build equity as well as the commissions. And so then they can also have a revenue share by sharing it with other people. Right. So I love the company. I love the concept. It's all virtual, so it's built for what's happening in the world right now. And just delighted. And I have an incredible team of people that work with me at EXP. So that really makes me happy that I see companies that are really interested in the individual, not just their bottom line. And then as part of it also, I had mentored several years ago 2 young doctors, and I know you're very involved in this company because I introduced it to you, ULA, Dr. Dave and Dr. Troy.
I interviewed Dr. Troy yesterday. It was a treat.
Yeah, and helped them get their book out. And then they decided their process for doing goal setting. They called it ULA for Ooh La La. And they came to me and told me they were starting this company where they were taking the goal setting and making it AI-driven, artificial intelligence, online, and they gamified it. And so as the more I got into it, I really was so consistent with my chapter in the book, One Big Life, for Think and Grow Rich for Women, where I talk about we have so many aspects of our life, not just work, life balance, but we have our fitness, our faith, our finances, our friends, our family, our fun, and then our business. And so they created the system over those 7 F's: field, family, fun, faith, friends, fitness, finance. I think that's all 7.
Yes. Nailed it.
Yeah. And I love the way they did it, because you go through this process. And so what's delivered to you is personal development that's unique to you. Mm-hmm. And so I joined forces with them to help them spread this word. And as a result, you became part of this as well.
Right.
So I'm really happy with both those companies, where I'm helping people find not just a way to make their life better, but a way for them to create income in their lives.
Which is an awesome tool, because so many people are drifting through life, right? And I think a big part of what you and I are talking about today is, how do you get anchored in something to help you move forward? And when I got introduced to it by you a little over a year ago, it was a no-brainer for me, because I've been teaching people about the importance of vision forever. And I had looked into creating my own digital platform at one point, and I'm so glad now I did not do it, because it's just amazing what they've created.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Yeah.
And I think, I'd like to just also mention, I had my first book with the Napoleon Hill Foundation is called 3 Feet from Gold. And we talk about the personal success equation. And I want people that are watching and listening to think about this as it applies to your life. It's P plus T, passion plus talent. And that's all about you. What makes you happy, what makes you mad, your passion and your talent. For me, it was being a CPA for more years than I want to admit, as well as having an accounting degree and all my publishing years of experience. Combine that. And most of us stop there because we think we have to do it on our own.
Right.
And these companies I just talked about in our relationship understand passion plus talent times association. Expand your group. Have the right people around you. And then times take action. Right? How many times do we know what we're supposed to do? We just don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm busted about that all the time. So passion times talent times association times action plus F, and that F is faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you're doing, faith that is needed and necessary, and faith that you will succeed. However, most of us, that F is fear. It keeps us from achieving the success we deserve.
Right.
And so every interview, every talk I give, I talk about the personal success equation. You go to personalsuccessequation.com, get a free gift from me. It's a workbook that you go through to determine your own personal success equation, your passion, your talent. Who do you need in your network? Mm-hmm. Times what action do you need to take, and having confidence. And when I start with a new client, Carey, it's usually the association and the faith that need the most work. And they kind of go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. When you have the right people around you and you have a bad day, they won't let you stay there. They lift you up.
Right.
And so we all need to pay attention to that, because it changes over time. You've heard the phrase, what got you here won't get you there, right? So you have a level of success, but to get to that next level, let's see, what new association do you need? What new mentor do you need? All right, do you have people in your network that are holding you back, or those cheering you on?
Yeah. I'm so glad you're bringing that up, because you know that I'm a big believer in that as well. You would not be sitting in this chair if I did not believe in that, right? The power of association. I've always been really good at reaching out and asking for help from the right people who are a little bit further down the road than I am, a little bit more successful, a little bit more balanced. And it's served me well in both of the businesses that I built and in my personal life too. Right? They become my tribe of people that, on the days that I want to quit or throw in the towel or just, hunker down, they remind me who I am and where I'm going. And I think that is so important and a great message that we need to share with everybody right now.
It is, particularly, people feel so isolated because they have been, right? And they feel afraid of admitting that they need something. And that's what they need to release.
Yeah.
Because we are all vulnerable. We all need people. And it's the joy of life is to be shared with other people. And if you can share the joy, let them help you get to that point if you're not there now.
Yeah. So last question is, where do you find your peace now, Sharon? You've got a lot going on. Very busy. Your family. spend time with them. Where do you find your peace?
And I just made the comment a few days ago. I've never felt calmer at this point, but yet at the same time, I've got lots of stuff going on. We own a ranch, cherrycreeklodge.com, that is a guest ranch. We make it available to the public, but we run away up there when we need a little quiet, and then I try to make it once a quarter. I make it to a beach with a sunset someplace. I'm
all about that plan.
Yes, that's my soul centering, and that's where I do all my writing.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor having you here, Sharon. You have no idea how much of what you've done in my life has brought me here. So I thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Carey. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
And if this message can help someone, just start looking up.
Yeah.
It'll be a great day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to this podcast. Please share it out. And I'm just here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com. And don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.